Oh my goodness, I know a lot of us were expecting it, but now we have the official news. A year of me enraged at the burger trailer of Concord, and it all leads to this very moment. Tweeted out by Jason Schreier 2 minutes ago as I am recording this video. Sony is shutting down Firewalk Studios, the maker of the recent shooter Concord. Wow, there is a lot to digest in terms of a game coming out just a couple months ago, getting shut down very quickly thereafter, and ultimately the entire studio now getting shut down. Now, obviously, hearts out to any developers being affected. When we talk about gaming and games being released, games being bad, games being good, in a vacuum, it's just us talking about video games, which is, in the grand scope of things, innocuous to the larger scale of life. When you talk about a studio getting shut down, there are actual jobs that are affected, there are livelihoods that are affected, and even if their outlook on what they think a good game is, their outlook on certain aspects of gaming, so on and so forth, they're people at the end of the day. Anybody losing their livelihood absolutely sucks, and I don't want to crap all over them or anything like that. Unfortunately, this news is terrible. I would just go back to elements of how did we get here? How did these games get greenlit? How did Concord in particular ever be deemed by somebody to be like, hey, this is what we should invest resources into? It's just incredibly bewildering to me. Now, the notes by Colin Moriarty that the game was costing $400 million, that has been pushed back on quite a bit, but there were certainly hundreds of millions of dollars, or at least $100 million that was sunk into Firewalk and Concord, the development, and it was a huge disaster. This is going to be looked back upon as one of the biggest failures in gaming history, and at the very least, even though in a vacuum, as I say, this game is a gigantic failure, it is a colossal failure. The shutdown of Firewalk is incredible in terms of how quickly after the release of Concord they were shut down. It is a case study. I think it's a game that a lot of people can look at and learn a lot from in terms of game promotion, understanding your audience, and what resonates with a larger portion of consumers. And maybe we have to disconnect ourselves from what is gaining some traction on social media versus what is going to be clicking with the larger scale of consumers, because the idea of Concord even getting greenlit very much to me comes across as an executive being knee-deep on social media and taking a lot of things from social media and then extrapolating it to the larger gaming populace. And especially for PlayStation, I think what has been readily clear over the last few years is it's honestly a little bit depressing how out of touch they are, and maybe that's me being a little bit too critical of them. You guys let me know your outlook, but it really feels like Sony is so disconnected from their hardcore gaming audience, and what to me it feels like is that Sony believes that they already have that hardcore audience wrapped around their finger, that they are always going to be there, and maybe to an extent they are right about that. That's why they are shifting their game release standpoint to these live service titles. What games can we release that'll bring in a brand new audience? If you look at what Concord, it is such a far disconnect of what brought PlayStation to the dance. It is not reminiscent of a game like Killzone. It is not reminiscent of a game like Resistance. It is so much of a far cry from what the hardcore PlayStation audience would deem something that they would resonate with. Even from a presentation, a stylistic standpoint, it is so far removed that to me, it comes across with either Sony being so disconnected from their core audience, or probably more likely, Sony not caring about who their core audience is. That's me giving them credit of them understanding who their core audience is, and maybe they aren't. I can't actually assess what is the reality as far as where Sony's thought process is on all of this, but I do think it is a cause for concern, not only with a game like Concord, but I look at a game like Fair Game as well, based on that CG trailer, which, again, I go back to that 2023 PlayStation Showcase, one of the worst gaming events legitimately of all time, especially comparatively to the standard I hold Sony to, but a lot of that event was just Sony being completely disconnected, and it is incredibly depressing when you look at this is what happens when you are disconnected to this extent. Hundreds of millions of dollars poured into the development of Concord, and now, what do you have to show for it? You have a game that's been shut down, years and years wasted, IPs that remain dormant in Sony's history, and I know Guerrilla has moved on from Killzone, but what if you allocated the resources that were invested into Concord and invested into another studio that could work on a new Killzone game? That just makes so much more sense to me. And obviously, hindsight is always going to be 2020. Maybe it's a standpoint of the Hellgast won't resonate with as much people as the Concord characters would resonate. And if you don't think that's the case, or if you don't think at least a few people are thinking that way, I just think at that point, you're completely fooling yourself. I 100% believe that there are people at Sony and people that greenlit this game that absolutely think that Concord, the presentation, the stylization of it, is going to resonate with a larger audience than a Killzone would. Because Killzone, while I think the core PlayStation audience would be excited for, is that going to break through to the outer gaming sphere? It absolutely could. I truly believe it could, especially if you would do a day-and-day release on PC. I think Killzone could certainly pop off. I don't think Sony themselves think that Killzone can pop off in the way that they thought Concord could pop off. That is, again, their thinking. I am trying to put myself in their shoes, in what they're thinking, and trying to make sense out of the train wreck that is this game. And this is what I am coming down to, that the reason we aren't seeing Gravity Rush, Killzone, and resources invested into that, and rather resources invested into Concord, as well as Fair Game, is because they view those titles as games that can extend beyond that core PlayStation bubble. I think they are foolish, absolutely wrong about that, but in the case of Concord, I was proven correct, and I've been crapping all over this game going back to June of 2023, going back to that showcase, not even from knowing what the game was, just from a promotional standpoint of revealing a burger trailer. It is incredible to me. And I look at something like Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown as well, a game that I actually did enjoy. Go back to that trailer when that dropped at Summer Game Fest 2023. It is this level of disconnection that these publishers, a Ubisoft, a Sony, have to their audience. Either disconnection or just sheer disrespect and not caring, and deeming that this is the way of the future, that Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, marketing it this way is going to make it resonate at a higher level, far beyond what Prince of Persia could ever do. Going with the Concord instead of Killzone, that's going to expand PlayStation greater than we could ever hope to expand with the Killzone or a Resistance. This is the way of the future, and to me, that comes across incredibly disconnected. To Sony, again, maybe they deem this to be a way of the future, but I do also believe that we need to take some of these L's. We need to take an L with Concord. We need to take an L with Fair Game. We need Last of Us factions to get outright canceled. We need some of these L's to ultimately pave the way for the course correction. I do think that course correction, as more and more millions and millions of dollars are burned, that course correction will come. It just doesn't seem like Concord was enough. It does seem like Sony is gonna very much go down this path for a long time, and at some point, they'll pull the plug. I do believe that, unless suddenly Fair Game is huge. Suddenly, this Horizon multiplayer project is huge. We'll see about that, but I do also understand from a business standpoint, their outlook is these single-player games have an artificial ceiling attached to them. A Concord, the idea is to make these characters resonate with an audience so much so we can monetize it for years and years. You guys already know how this business model goes. You know why the EAs, the Ubisofts, the PlayStations, the Microsofts, they're so desperate to get this market and to get into the live service market. You know, pushing aside even the stylization and artistic representation of Concord, I'm talking about now just the live service model. We all know why they're chasing after that bag, and I can understand it to an extent, but there are many foundational and fundamental problems of so many players chasing that bag that you're seeing that come to roost now with stories like this. And for every Helldivers 2, you'll see a lot of Concords. You'll see a lot of other games that completely flop. So let me know what you guys think. An insane story, to say the least, and one that I'm sure is going to be a case study for years and years to come. I already foresee year 2040 people talking about the disaster that was Concord. Those YouTube docs are definitely coming. That's going to do it for me. Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.